Guys, welcome back to another video. I will be going over the afternoon games that happened today. This will probably not include the Sunday night football game between the Cowboys and I believe the Rams. But let's get in and let's talk about some after what happened in these afternoon football games today. Now, first game I'm going to talk about was the Jets and the Bills. And the Jets did not do well offensively in the first half, only having 3 points in the first half. And you look at really their whole game stats. Sam Darnold, he was one of one today. One touchdown and one interception. He completed 21 of his 35 passes. It wasn't that great of a day for the Jets in general. It wasn't really that good. He had an interception. Matt Milano had that interception. The Jets punted 6 times today. On those punts, Brandon Mann, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, averaged 46.3 yards. His longest punt of the day was 58 yards. By contrast, the Bills only punted once today. Corey Borjak, I'm not going to pronounce that name right. Corey, whatever his last name is, punted once with 58 yards. And that's, back. I want to talk a little more about this Bills offense today. Josh Allen, what a day he had. He completed 33 of his 46 passes, threw for 312 yards, 2 touchdowns. What a day for him. And he also had some rushes today. He had 57 yards off 14 carries, which is an average of 4.1, which he also had a rushing touchdown as well. Now let's get into the receiving for the Bills. Stephon Diggs, he was really, really good today. In his Bills debut, he had 8 receptions off 9 targets, and he had 86 yards, which is an average of 10.8 per reception. What a day for him. John Brown, he had a good day as well. He had 9 catches off 10 targets and had 70 yards, and that means that he had an average of 11.7. Average point 11.7 per carry or per catch. And he also had 1 touchdown on the day as well. Zach Moss would have the other touchdown for the Bills in this game, or passing touchdown in this game. The Jets, their real miscue in this game was they didn't really score in the first half of this game, and by the end, it was kind of too late. They would score a touchdown each quarter of the final of the second half, where Jamison Crowder scored 1 for them, and you had a rushing touchdown by Josh Adams. But yeah, it was just kind of too late. It's hard to develop some narratives from these games. I'm just going to be talking about what happens in it, just because it's week 1. But yeah, it's kind of hard with such a limited sample size. The game I want to talk about is the Patriots Dolphins. And in this game, Cam Newton showed his haters wrong. He completed 15 of his 19 passes, had 155 yards. He also had some rushing attempts. He had 75 yards on 15 carries, which is his average for 5.0. And he also had 2 rushing touchdowns as well. He was on fire today. That's just my big takeaway from this game. Another thing I took away from this game was how poorly Ryan Fitzpatrick played in this game. He did complete 20 of his 30 passes and threw for 191 yards, but he had 3 interceptions. Those 3 interceptions, they belonged to Stephon Gilmore, who had 1. Adrian Phillips had another 1. And J.C. Jackson had another interception. It really wasn't really a good day for Ryan Fitzpatrick. He also fumbled the ball at some point of this game. A lot of Miami writers' articles that I've been reading, like the Sun Sentinel and the Miami. I forget what the title is, but there's been a lot of articles saying maybe it's time for Tua, which is again an overreaction. First of all, you should wait till he's healthy. He's not completely healthy right now, even though he passed his physical. I forget which date. But you got to wait onto that. And he's a rookie still. You got to ease him into this. That's why you have Ryan Fitzpatrick. Another thing that was concerned, the kicking. The kicking for the Patriots seems to be a concern for this game. Nick Folk missed his 1 field goal of the day, but he did make his 3 extra points. So it isn't that much of a concern, but there was a lot of concern going into the season about the Patriots kicking. That's all I got really from this game. It was close at halftime, and the Patriots were only up by 7-3, even though they shouldn't have been up by more. But I mean, that's really it. Yeah. All right, on to Browns versus Ravens. Browns versus Ravens. Man, this one was ugly. This game, the Ravens won by 38, and the Browns only scored 6. Baker Mayfield, he was 21. He completed 21 of his 39 passes. He did have 189 yards, but he had 1 touchdown, but he also had an interception of this game. That interception was caused by Marlon Humphrey. Now, I'm not going to press the panic button because I'm not going to press the panic button on the Cleveland Browns. But again, this is a huge sign of concern for them. Jarvis Landry, he would have 61 yards today, he completed 5 of his 6 targets today. Odell, he did not have a good day today. Some of that is on Baker Mayfield. His passes weren't completely on target today. Odell had 3 catches and he had 10 targets. So he missed 7 of his catches. He had 22 yards when he did catch. He had 22 yards off his 3 catches, with an average of 7.3 per catch. Now let's get into Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, he was doing Lamar Jackson things. He completed 20 of his 25 passes. He had 275 yards, 3 touchdowns, and for an average of 11 yards per passing play. Now, the Browns, they did not do well on 3rd down today. They were 3 of 12. The Ravens were 6 of 11. That's just one key difference there. Also, Browns, they averaged 4.1 yards per pass. The Ravens, they averaged 9.6 per pass. That is a huge difference in this game. Yards per play. The Browns averaged 4.5 yards per pass. Not bad, but guess what the Ravens did? 6.5% per pass. That means, on average, they would probably have a first down every 2 downs. Now, that probably isn't the best use of a stat there because that takes the cumulative allowed of yards that the Ravens had that day, and it divides it by the amount of downs they have, which isn't really relative. But yeah, it really wasn't a good day for the Browns, either on offense or defense. Now, the Ravens did have a good day rushing the ball. It was rushing by committee today. They had 107 yards for the team. Lamar Jackson, he had 45 yards on 7 carries. Mark Ingram, he had 29 yards on 10 carries. J.K. Dobbins, he had 22 yards on 7 carries. And the list goes on. Let's go on to Colts Jaguars. The first thing that comes to mind when talking about this game is Gardner Minshew. He completed 19 of his 20 passes. He only had 1 incomplete pass. He had 173 yards. He averaged 8.7 per pass. And he had 3 touchdowns. What a game for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it was a come-from-behind victory. That they would actually get a 4th down stop to secure the victory as the Colts were driving down within the 2-minute warning. Now on the other side, Phillip Rivers, he played pretty well. He didn't play bad in his Colts debut. He did have 2 interceptions today, but he also completed 36 of his 46 passes, which means he throwed for 363 yards, averaging 7.9 per pass. And he also did have a touchdown. That touchdown would be a receiving touchdown to Nyheim Hines. I did not pronounce that name right. But what are my thoughts on this game? It really did seem like the Colts would win this game. They were up by 7 after the first quarter. But the Jaguars would respond with 14 points in the second quarter. But the Colts would score 10 in the second quarter to make it a 17-14 lead. Now no one would really score in the third. But the Jaguars would have 10 points in the fourth quarter. They came up clutch in this game, and that's how they won this game today. James Robinson, he played pretty well today. He didn't play great, but he played okay. He averaged 62 yards on 16 carries on an average of 3.9 per carry. Now on the defensive side of the ball, Myles Jack played incredible today. He had 11 tackles. 8 of those tackles were severed tackles. He also had 1 sack, and he had 1 tackle for loss. He also hit the QB 3 times. His 3 QB hits made up 3 of the 5 QB hits that the Jaguars would have for the game. He also had the only sack that the Jaguars had all game. Also on the defensive side of the ball, C.J. Henderson, the Jaguars' first-round pick from this year, had an interception today. Also, C.J. Henderson, he would make the game-winning stop by getting a key deflection on a pass. I believe that was intended for T.Y. Hilton on, I believe, what was an out route. And that's all I really got from this game. I mean, the Jaguars came in clutch. They proved today that they were not the worst team in the league. Now, on to the Washington football team versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this was the big shocker of today. The Washington football team, behind Dwayne Haskins, who completed 11 of his 31 passes for 178 yards, won the game against the Eagles, 21-17. They also had 13 points in the fourth quarter, which came in clutch because they were down by 3 at the end of the third. And what a game this was. Washington's defense, it would have 8 sacks. John Bosnick had 1. Matt Ionis had 1.5. Chase Young, the number 2 pick in this previous draft, had 1.5 sacks. Jonathan Allen had 0.5. Ryan Kerrigan had 2 sacks. He also had 2 tackles that were for a loss. Montez Sweat had a sack. Darian Payne had a 0.5 a sack. They also had 10 tackles for loss. Landon Collins had 2 tackles for a loss. Ryan Kerrigan had 2 tackles for a loss. Montez Sweat had 2 tackles for a loss. Everybody was playing good on this defensive team today for the Washington football. Now, there is another stat that shows how dominant this Washington football team was today on defense. They had 14 QB hits. They were getting to the QB. John Bosnick, he had 3 QB hits. Matt Ionis, he had 4 QB hits. Chase Young, he had 1. Jonathan Allen, he had 1. Ryan Kerrigan had 2. Montez Sweat had 2. And Darren Payne had 1. Let's talk about how the Washington football team also had 2 interceptions today. Johnny Moreland had 1. Fabon Moreau, I'm not pronouncing that name right, had another 1. This Washington football team today's defense was on fire. And now let's talk a little bit about the Eagles' performance in this game. There are some positives if you're an Eagles fan. Dallas Goedert, he had a pretty good game today. He had 8 receptions on 9 targets. Now there are some, again I said there are some more positives for the Eagles. They were leaving at halftime, and as you know, they had a lot of people injured for this game that were off, they were not able to play today. Miles Sanders, who was expected to really be a huge impact on the running game, was not playing today. Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, 2 key offensive linemen were not able to play today. Alshon Jeffrey, their top wide receiver, was not able to play today. The wide receiver core wasn't that good. Deshaun Jackson had 2 receptions on 7 carries. Jalen Reagor, he had 1 nice catch, but he also missed 3 other catches. 1 reception on 4 targets. That 1 nice catch got 55 yards. Eagles, they had the lead at halftime. They kind of blew it. That's my reaction to this game. Now let's get on the Bears-Lions. It really looked like the Detroit Lions were going to come away with this game. The Bears only had 6 points after the third quarter. But then, the Bears scored 21 points in the fourth quarter while the Lions scored 0. Mitchell Trubisky, he was completed 20 of his 36 passes, 242 yards, 3 touchdowns. And those 3 touchdowns belong to Anthony Miller. Jimmy Graham, that red zone target. Jimmy Graham, he had 3 receptions on 7 targets. He had 25 yards, 8.3 per average yard. And the other touchdown belonged to Javon Wims, whose 1 catch came on that touchdown. Now, this really looked like it was going to be Detroit's game. And then in the fourth quarter, as I said before, the Chicago Bears came alive and won this game. Now, let's get into some other notes I have from this game. Adrian Peterson, he was a nice surprise. He had 93 yards on 14 carries and was 6.6 per average carry. And as I note, he was cut by the Washington football team a week ago, I want to say. And he played well, and he fit in very nice well with that running back by committee. You got Adrian Peterson, you got Kerryon Johnson, and DeAndre Smith. Today it was more like Adrian Peterson was taking all the carries. He took 14 of the 29 carries that they had overall. Keep in mind that Stafford also ran 5 times today. It won't be like that all season. Stafford does not run the QB scram, and does not scramble a lot, because he's not that good at running. Now, let's get into some. That's really all I got from this game. Now let's go to Packers-Vikings. Now this one was really just much a blowout from the beginning. In the first quarter, it was competitive, 3-7. And then the Packers would have 19 points in the second quarter. Aaron Rodgers, he would have 32. He would complete 32 of his 44 passes. He had 364 yards, 4 touchdowns. Those 4 touchdowns, 2 of them would be thrown to Devontae Adams. 1 of them would be thrown to Alan Lazard. And then another one would be thrown to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Devontae Adams, he had a day. On 17 targets, he had 14 receptions and 156 yards. And he averaged 11.1 per catch. What a day he had. Now, if you're a Vikings fan, there wasn't really a lot to really, be encouraged by. They did kind of make it close towards the end in the fourth quarter with having 24 points. By then, it was kind of over. But, really, this falls on the defense for allowing 44 points tonight. Now, if you look at this defense for the Vikings, they did not do well. They only had 2 tackles for loss, 0 sacks, and only 2 QB hits. By contrast, the Packers, they had 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, and they had 4 QB hits. They got to the QB a lot today. And also, Kirk Cousins, he threw an interception today. Jair Alexander, he had an interception. Now, let's go to Kirk Cousins' performance in this game. He completed 19 of his 25 passes for 259 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, and he had 1 interception, as I stated before. Dalvin Cook, he would pick up 2 touchdowns today, and he would also have 50 yards, 4.2 per carry. And that's really all I got from this game. Adam Thielen, he would show up. He had 6 receptions on 8 targets and 110 yards, 8.3 per catch. He also had 2 touchdowns. What a game he had. But yeah, that's really all I got from this game. Now let's get on to Seahawks Falcons. Let's get into the Seahawks versus the Falcons. Now this game was very similar to the Packers Vikings game, but the Seahawks, they would kind of blow the Falcons out of the water in the third quarter instead of the second quarter. In the third quarter, the Seahawks had 14 points, which would make this game kind of untenable for the Falcons. By then they had 28 points, and the Falcons, on the other hand, had 12, which was kind of over for the Falcons in this game. Russell Wilson, he had a day, 322 yards, 9.5 per pass, 4 touchdowns. What a day he had. He also rushed the ball 29 times on 3 carries. Now let's go for the receiving for the Seahawks. DK Metcalf, he was pretty okay today. He had 4 receptions, 95 yards, and 1 touchdown, but he did need 8 targets to get there. Tyler Lockett, he was amazing today. He had 8 receptions on 8 targets, 92 yards, 11.5 average per catch. Chris Carson, he was amazing out of the backfield. He had 6 receptions on 6 targets, 45 yards, and 7 yards per carry. David Moore, he was perfect as well. Had 3 receptions on 3 targets, 28 yards, 9.3 per catch. And Greg Olsen, he was also perfect as well. He had 24 yards on 6.0 per catch, and also had 1 touchdown. And Chris Carson had 2 touchdowns, which I maybe have mentioned, but I just want to acknowledge that. Freddie Swan and Jacob Holster and Will Daisley and Trevin Homer were also perfect from the day, but I mean, I don't really want to mention that because they only had 2 catches, which, it's not bad, but like, it's not a lot. It's a small sample size. On the other side, Matt Ryan, he had 2 touchdowns, but he also had an interception. That interception was caused by Quandar Diggs. He had an interception. Also, before I get to the Falcons on offense, I want to get onto that new trade, that new acquisition the Seahawks have. Jamal Adams. He had a day. He had 12 tackles, 8 solo tackles, 1 sack from the safety position, and he had 2 tackles for loss from the safety position. He also had 2 QB hits from the safety position. What a day he had. And he had 1 of the 2 sacks that the Seahawks had today. Now let's go on to the Falcons today. Now the Falcons today, Matt Ryan had 37 on 54 yards. He had 450 yards, 8.3 yards per pass. He had 2 touchdowns, but he also had an interception, which was not really good. Todd Gurley, in his Falcons debut, he had 14 carries on 56 yards. An average of 4.0 per carry. Julio Jones, did he play well today? Yes, he did. He had, on 12 targets, he had 9 receptions and 157 yards. He averaged 17.4 per catch. Calvin Ridley, in his NFL debut, mind you, he had on 12 targets, he had 9 catches with 130 yards, and he also had 2 touchdowns. The only 2 touchdowns that the Falcons had all day. I really got from this Seahawks Falcons game. Now let's go on to the Raiders versus the Panthers. Derek Carr, he would have 239 yards on 22 completed passes of his 30 attempted passes today. The Raiders, they would win this game 34-30. They would have, despite the Panthers scoring 15 points in the 4th quarter. Teddy Bridgewater, in his Panthers debut, he had 22 completed passes on 34 attempts. He had 1 touchdown as well. Christian McCaffrey, he had 96 yards on 23 carries, 4.2 average per carry, and he also had 2 touchdowns. What a big day for him. Robbie Harrison would have the 1 passing touchdown for the Carolina Panthers. Let's next talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Saints. Now, Tom Brady, although he would have a good second half, he would have 2 interceptions in the first half. That was not very strong in this game. And Drew Brees, on the other hand, he would have 2 touchdowns. He completed 18 of his 30 passes. Jared Cook, he would have 5 receptions on 7 targets. He would have 80 yards. Alvin Kamara, he would have 5 receptions on 8 targets. Michael Thomas, he didn't have that much of a big day for him. He only had 3 receptions on 5 targets for 17 yards. And, I mean, it really wasn't a good day. A lot of miscues for the Buccaneers in this game. Tom Brady, he had 1 fumble. As I said before, he had 2 interceptions. He also had a muffed punt in this game. I forget when, but yeah, it really wasn't a good game for the Buccaneers. There was a lot of punting in this game. The Buccaneers had 5 punts, and the Saints had 6 punts. But yeah, I mean, the reason the Buccaneers lost this game was because of their performance in the first half. They only had 7 points in the first half, and the Saints had 17. And yeah, that's kind of it. Now let's talk about the Cardinals versus the 49ers. Kyler Murray, he would have a nice day today. He would complete 26 of his 40 passes for 230 yards, 1 touchdown. Yet he would also have an interception in this game. Now I want to talk about next, DeAndre Hopkins in his Cardinals debut on 16 targets. He had 14 receptions and 151 yards on 10.8 for every catch he had, he averaged 10.8 on the catch, which was a really nice day for him. He would not have the sole passing touchdown in this game, as that would go to Case Edwards. Cardinals really shocked me in this game, especially in the fourth quarter. They had 14 points in the fourth quarter, and that's how they won this game. Now let's go into the final one in this. Let's go on to the Chargers-Bengals in this Sunday afternoon Week 1 showcase. This was actually a pretty good instant game. Joe Burrow in his debut, the number 1 pick. He did have an interception, but he did complete 23 of his 36 passes for 193 yards. It was a pretty nice day for him. AJ Green, he would complete 5 of his catches on 9 targets, which means he would average 10.2 per catch, and he would have 51 yards. But Joe Mixon, he did not have a good day today. He averaged 19 carries for 69 yards and 3.6 per carry. But he did have a fumble in this game. Also, Joe Burrow had a fumble in this game. He was not very good at limiting the turnover in this game. He had an interception to Melvin Ingram III, and he also had a fumble in this game. And the Chargers really stuck it out in the end when the Bengals missed a field goal to win this game. Randy Bullock, he made 2 of his 3 field goals, but the last field goal of this game, that was the field goal to tie the game and make it go to overtime. He did not hit the uprights. He did not make it go through the uprights, and they lost this game. And that's all I really got today. And let's watch some Sunday Night Football.